First story. Entitled Family Physically Assaulted and Disowned Me, believing my coworkers' false accusations of me cheating on my wife. She divorced me, took our unborn baby, ruined my life, and then hooked up with my brother. Now, 16 years later, I have rebuilt my life and married my ex's sister. Originally, I posted this on another subreddit, but it was recommended that I post it here. My intention in posting this is to vent and let off some stress. I am not sure how much will be covered in this publication, but I will try to tell as much as possible to avoid any doubt. The content of this post is intended to provide some context about what happened between me and my family, so that in the next post, I can go into more depth on reuniting with my family. This story actually began 25 years ago, in 1998, when I was 17 years old. I am currently 42 years old. It was during this period that I first met my now ex-wife, Rachel. We both lived in a small town in central Mexico. I was in high school at the time, and during the first semester, I became friends with one of my classmates, Lily. Lily and I got along very well from the beginning, and as a result, we quickly formed a good friendship. One day, in between our usual conversation, Lily invited me to her house to spend some time, which I agreed to. As I remember, we arrived at Lily's house, spent some time doing some schoolwork, and then started playing some video games. After a few minutes, the door of the house opened, and a few seconds later, we saw a girl very similar to Lily enter the house. It turned out that Lily had a twin sister named Rachel. After seeing her for a few minutes, a small conversation started between me, Lily, and Rachel. After a few minutes of conversation between the three of us, Rachel and I continued the conversation alone, having a good first meeting at the end. I would be lying to you if I told you that I remember everything, but by way of summary, after that first meeting, I kept in touch with Rachel. We started to spend a lot of time together. We went for walks together, and over time, we both started to develop feelings for each other. We went on a few dates, and we finally formalized our courtship when we were both 19 years old. It is important to mention that Rachel is a person who suffers from 2 disabilities. She has been blind since birth. She was diagnosed with congenital blindness, and at the age of 16, she was diagnosed with cardiac arrhythmia. This means that her heart rhythm is irregular, so there were times when her heart rate was very low. I must admit that at the beginning, it was complicated to adapt to living with a disabled person. In Lily's case, she only has a slight case of myopia. By my own decision, and that of Rachel's family, I started to study medicine and take some courses and training to be someone capable of taking care of and guaranteeing Rachel's physical and mental safety. At that time, I was studying accounting, but I was offered the opportunity to attend some courses in a medical center, so I accepted. Most of the training I took was to deal with Rachel's cardiac arrhythmia, but I did it all with pleasure because I loved her, and after all, one does everything to see the person one loves happy and healthy. At that time, Rachel was what they would call the perfect girl. Physically, she was beautiful and attractive. But the most remarkable thing was her personality. She was an intelligent, charismatic, empathetic, motherly, and loving person. She was truly able to endear herself to anyone she talked to, and that made her somewhat popular and loved in the small town we lived in. In 2000, our courtship began while we were both in college. Our families celebrated a lot. They were very close before, and knowing that there was a relationship between Rachel and me made them very happy. My mother and Rachel's mother were good friends, and as for my father, he enjoyed discussing work-related issues with his mother. I always had a good relationship with her family, including being the best man at her older sister's wedding. Another important point is that Rachel's father passed away when she was 7 years old. But despite that, he was and still is a beloved figure in her family. I thought there was nothing to worry about in terms of the family aspect at that time. My family at that time consisted of me, my parents, and my 3 younger siblings. For a better understanding, I will list my family as follows. My mother, my father, Isaac, my younger brother by 1 year, Louis, my younger brother by 3 years, Daniel, my youngest brother for 4 years. On Rachel's side of the family, I will list them as follows. Tanya, Rachel's mother, Sophia, Rachel's older sister, Lily, Rachel's twin sister, Rachel, now ex. In 2003, Rachel and I graduated from college at the age of 22, and we both decided to get married that same year. Needless to say, our families were excited to hear the news about our wedding. It was truly a very special moment for both of us. The wedding was simply perfect. From the venue to the food to the music, everything we had dreamed of was present on that day. Shortly after the wedding, we moved in to start our life as a couple. Although for the first few days I noticed some restlessness in Rachel. When she told me she was just a little stressed about the wedding, her restlessness didn't last more than a day. She was back to her old self very quickly. A month after the wedding, something important happened, which was Lily's disappearance from the family sphere. At that time, Lily was working in the city bank as an accountant, being recommended by her mother for the position. Normally, we used to have drinks on Fridays after a tiring week, but one day she just didn't show up at the bar we used to go to. At first, I didn't worry about it, but the following week, Rishel informed me that Lily was no longer coming back. When I asked Rishel about it, she wouldn't say anything about it, so I thought I would go and check with her mother. Upon questioning Tanya about this, she told me that Lily was arrested last week, that she had betrayed her and her family, that she was a horrible person who had stolen and brought her family's reputation into question, that because of her actions many people would have their lives greatly harmed, etc. What you are reading is a portion of what Tanya told me. I would like to give more details, but the other things she said are already very personal. Finally, the last I heard about Lily was that she was sentenced to 13 years in prison that year. Her entire family refused to visit her, and I have been forbidden to have contact with her. The rejection for her was such that her own family refused to attend the trial, so that they would not be associated with her, closing all communication after her sentence was passed. The next 2 years were fairly quiet. I started working as an accountant for a small company in the city, while Rishel worked as a teacher for blind people. My marriage was amazing. Obviously, we had some ups and downs, but it wasn't really something to worry about. We were always a communicative, loving, and caring couple. Rishel being disabled limited some aspects, but we still had a good relationship emotionally and physically. Although my work consumed a lot of my time, I always tried to spend at least 3 hours a day with Rishel. We had 1 date a week, and the idea of starting a family became present after a while. In 2005, I had to go on a business trip with some colleagues to close a deal that would benefit our company. The only important person in this was a former co-worker named Emma. I really had no relationship with her, as this was our only interaction at work. After a few days, the negotiation was successful, and the deal was closed. To celebrate, my coworkers decided to go to a bar. The celebration was what you would expect. Most of my coworkers ended up drunk. In my case, I did not get to that point, limiting myself to talking with some of my colleagues on various topics. After a while, I decided to go back to the hotel where we were staying. As I was leaving the place, Emma crashed into me, and we both fell to the ground. Like most of my companions at that moment, I could see that she was drunk. I stood up again and tried to help Emma get up, which was not possible because of the state she was in. One of my companions, upon seeing this, told me that it would be best to take Emma back to the hotel. I agreed, and offering one of my arms as support, I carried Emma back. I was really only planning to leave her in front of the door of her room and go, but in the end I had to carry her to her bed, where I simply laid her down, and a few seconds later I went to my room. The next day, we returned to our respective homes without incident. 4 days after I returned from my business trip, I was on my way back from work when I noticed my parents' car, Tanya's car, outside my house. Upon entering, I found Rishel's mother, her older sister, and my parents standing in the living room. They all looked furious. Rishel was sitting on the couch, crying. She was 4 weeks pregnant at this point. Without having time to process the scene, I received a loud slap from Sophia, which was followed by several screams from those present. I questioned why everyone was acting this way, and finally Rishel spoke up, and all she said was, "Why did you do that?" I asked her what she meant by that, and quickly everyone started yelling at me and accusing me of cheating on Rishel during my business trip. I questioned them where that accusation came from, to which Tanya said that Emma approached her to say that I supposedly had an affair with her, that I supposedly had for some time an emotional affair with her, that during the trip transitioned to a physical affair. Apparently Emma was very detailed in her story, that she managed to pass off her lie as true. She also mentioned that she had supposedly said very cruel things about Rishel related to her condition, among other things. I told them that Emma was lying, and there wasn't something to prove what she said. But Sophia replied that they asked everyone who went on the trip with us, all agreeing that they saw me go with Emma back to the hotel alone. This point is true, but it's because no one wanted to help me take Emma back to her room. I begged Rishel to believe me, but she responded that she wanted nothing more to do with me asking for a divorce. The yelling and insults towards me continued until I was kicked out of my house. The following months were total hell. I was forced to quit my job when everyone found out what was going on. Because we lived in a small town, most people knew each other, so you get an idea of the hatred I received throughout that time, with everyone yelling insults at me, and sometimes escalating to physical assaults. My parents told me I was a disgrace to the family. My siblings disowned and insulted me. Rishel's family likewise did the same to everyone, refusing to have any kind of relationship with me. I thought of turning to those who were my friends, but I was also rejected by them. In this period of time, I must highlight the behavior of my brother Louis, who made suspicious comments about what was happening. I later learned that he was the one who comforted Rishel during the divorce process. The divorce process lasted about a year, during which I was not allowed to have contact with Rishel at any time. All contact was through her lawyer. Finally, in 2006, the process ended with me losing almost everything due to the nature of the situation. Where I lived, adultery is considered something serious. So in addition to having to pay alimony, I had to pay financial compensation, among other things. But my lawyer got an agreement not to have to pay alimony. In the end, I had to give my house, my car, 80% of my savings, and a compensation of $160K. Once the divorce was finalized, both my family and Rishel's family cut off all contact with me. The last I heard about them was that my brother Louis and Rishel started a relationship. At that point, I had basically lost everything. I lost my family, my friends, my reputation, everything. No one wanted to relate to me, so it was impossible for me to get a job. I was marginalized by everyone who lived in that city. To go on with my life made no sense, so I thought about ending it all, but in the end, I didn't have the courage to do it. Finally, I decided to sell what little I had to raise some money, and I finally left that place. I moved to a city that was 6 hours away from where I lived before. My goal was to be as far away as possible, so I moved to a city in the northern part of Mexico. Finally, I arrived in another state. I didn't have much money at the time, so I took small jobs to raise some money. A few months after starting my new life, I noticed that several businesses in the area where I lived required guidance and assistance related to filing taxes and performing audits. I saw this as a new opportunity, so I began to give advice and consultations related to tax returns and the correct performance of audits. In 2007, I was able to form a small and somewhat successful consulting and economic advice company. But at that time, I had serious emotional problems, mostly confidence and self-esteem issues. Once I was able to reach economic stability again, I had the opportunity and the means to take therapy. It really helped me a lot to finally be able to deal with my emotional problems. With my therapist, I addressed several issues: my relationship with my family, my relationship with my friends, and my relationship with my ex-wife at the time. I felt that I was somewhat to blame for what happened. Mostly, I felt like an idiot for not having suspected anything about Emma. And I also questioned why all this happened with Emma. In the end, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the experience I lived through during the divorce. But the most serious thing was that I developed an anxiety disorder that affected me greatly when socializing with other people. At that time, I was unable to form any kind of relationship with people because of my fear of being betrayed. It was a slow process, but I managed to get through it. I understood that I was not to blame for what happened. I was able to start the healing process, and I stopped questioning Emma's motive for lying. I was physically and mentally well. I started going to the gym, developed a love for gardening and kickboxing, and focused on my work. I even started to make some friends, and after a while, I was confident enough to go out for a few drinks. The next 2 years were pretty good for me. My small company had good growth, so money was no longer a problem. I was not a millionaire or something similar, but I earned enough to not have to worry. Emotionally, I was fine. My confidence problems were no longer so serious, and my fear of relating to other people was disappearing, although it was still somewhat present. I was able to meet my current friends, who were very understanding about my situation, and I was finally able to be okay with myself. 2009 was an important year. Due to the growth that my company was experiencing, I had to look for more personnel, and among those personnel, I was looking for accountants for the company. As I was reviewing some of the job applications, one of them stood out above the rest. The application was from Lily. That surprised me a bit, as that reminded me of my old friend, but at the time I thought it was just a coincidence. Finally, I had the interview with the person who sent the application, and it was great to see that it was really Lily I knew. We both recognized each other instantly and remained silent. Honestly, it was something uncomfortable, since she was my ex-wife's twin. Several painful memories came back to my mind when I saw her face. After a few minutes, I continued with the interview in the most normal way I could, and in the end, I must admit it was a good interview. Finally, Lily got one of the positions, and a few days later she showed up to start working. Regardless of what happened in the past, Lily was one of the best options. so it would be stupid not to hire someone with great experience and knowledge in the area. In addition, her job application did not mention any criminal record, so there was no problem hiring her. In the beginning, communication between Lily and me was nil, limited to work-related interactions, including her interactions with other employees. During this period, Lily just showed up to work, did her job, and went home without any contact with anyone. Lily continued this behavior for a few more months. One day, an important project came up for the company, which meant more work, and therefore more hours of work. At the end of the work schedule, I used to stay overtime to advance some of the pending work. Then Lily volunteered to help with the pending work, which I accepted. Most of those extra hours passed with both of us being in total silence, until one day Lily invited me to have a drink. Lily seemed very nervous and a bit scared when I made the proposal. At first I had no intention of accepting her invitation, but at that moment I was very stressed, so a drink would not go amiss. Actually, the little outing was not very remarkable, but overall, it was quite nice to spend time with her. We talked about work-related issues. After a while, Lily started to gain more confidence, so we got closer little by little until we started to form a formal friendship again, which grew over time. After work was over, we would sometimes spend time talking. We would share our lunch break, and on Fridays we would go for a few drinks like in the old days. On one of our outings to the bar, I decided to be open with her and tell her everything that happened with me and Rachel. Lily had previously asked about how Rachel was doing, to which I just said that we got divorced without talking about why. I told her what happened with Emma and how everything went during the divorce proceedings. At that moment, Lily was surprised by everything that had happened, to which I asked her if a lie was really enough for our families to cut off contact with me. I replied that I did not know all the details, so I did not know if there was something else that led them to take that position. For her part, Lily was very upset and asked if one lie was enough to overshadow the years I spent with our families. Finally, she said she would be there for me if I needed to talk again. Up to that point, I had only talked in depth about my divorce issue with my therapist, so letting it all out took a huge weight off my back. Overall, Lily was a great addition to the company, managing to stand out and rise quickly within the company despite her time in prison. But despite this, something was not right with her. I noticed how Lily's problems working as part of a team or with other employees were still present. So on one of our drink outings, I asked her if everything was okay. When I asked the question, Lily seemed nervous and scared, so I apologized for asking the question. But I told her the same thing she told me when I told her about my divorce. I told her that if she needed to talk to someone, she could count on me. The next few days went by as normal, until on one of our outings to the bar, Lily finally decided to open up to me. She told me about what happened in the past and why she was arrested. In a somewhat summarized and simplified way, Lily worked at the bank in the city where we both lived before. She explained to me that her duties at the bank were to perform the annual startup of the accounting system, in addition to working on budget allocations, budget items, projects, etc. Because Lily proved to be a very efficient and capable element, the people in charge of the bank assigned her to a position where she had access to a large database containing all the information about the clients and people who had an account in the bank, allowing her to perform her duties in a better way. In addition to Lily, there was also another guy who had the same duties as her. He said that one day, the administration was bombarded by complaints from angry people who reported that their savings accounts were zero, or that they had no money in their bank accounts at all. After a few hours, the bank's administration realized that the bank accounts of several people were indeed being emptied. After a few hours, and since there was nothing that could solve the problem, they were forced to restrict access to all associated accounts, resulting in what we know in Mexico as a corralito. This means that for a few days no one could enter or withdraw money from their accounts, which was very problematic. When investigating what happened, the cause of the problem was found. It turned out that a criminal group, it is most likely that these people were members of some cartel of the time. But this was not made clear, had access to the information stored in the database by information. I mean card numbers, passwords, etc. So that having this information, they dedicated themselves to emptying several bank or savings accounts. The bank managed to recover some of the stolen money, but some of it could not be recovered. Most of those involved were arrested 2 days after the event, but others managed to escape. Lily was taken into custody while the investigation was ongoing. The people who had access to the database were investigated, leaving Lily and her co-worker as the only suspects. But the latter could not be investigated further because he, curiously, resigned a few days before the event and disappeared from the city. The perpetrators stated that someone who worked at the bank gave them access to the information stored in the database. but that they did not know who it was because contact with this person was made by another member of this group who managed to escape. The investigation also showed that this group had to be guided by someone who had knowledge about the operation of the bank. Because of these and other factors that were presented, it was suggested that Lily was the one who helped these people. In the end, she was found guilty, although perhaps she was only used as a scapegoat to close the case, which would not surprise me considering the history of the Mexican police in this type of thing. Then she told me how her family turned their back on her during the whole period of the investigation. I highlight her mother, who did not believe her at any time about her innocence at this time. There was some tension between Lily and her mother for situations related to their relationship. It seems that this fact complicated things. Finally, Tanya threw in her face the damage that her action had caused to both her family's reputation and the people who lost their savings. When her sentence was passed, her mother went to her for the last time to tell her that they did not want to see her again in their lives, to which Lily returned to say that she was innocent, with her mother replying, "If you were found guilty, it was for something, right?" Soon after, her family cut all contact with her, leaving her completely devastated. As soon as Lily finished speaking, I began to apologize to her for not being with her when I needed to be, to which she replied that I did not have to apologize, because even if I had wanted to communicate, Tanya would not have allowed me to do so. Tanya was the only one allowed to visit Lily in prison, so if anyone wanted to visit her, they had to have her permission to do so. Besides this, Tanya also prevented contact by other means, such as correspondence and phone calls. After a few minutes, I asked Lily how she managed to get out of prison, to which she replied that she was imprisoned for 5 years, until one of the people who managed to escape was arrested. It turned out that this person was in charge of having contact with the person who gave access to the database to this group. In exchange for reducing her sentence, she agreed to give information about the fraud and how it was carried out. Ultimately, her statements proved that it was Lily's former partner who helped this group, coupled with the lack of evidence to genuinely validate Lily's participation in the scheme. In the end, it was ruled that there was no reason for Lily to remain in prison, so she was released, and any criminal record on her record was expunged. She said that after her release, she tried to contact her family, but in the end, she was only able to contact her mother, who again refused to have any relationship with her. The same thing happened with her friends, who rejected her. She told me about her attempts to get a job, but the news of what happened in her previous job prevented her from getting a position in her hometown and in nearby cities. Finally, Lily left the city, as there was no reason to stay there. After that, she spent a few months looking for a job and ended up coming to my company. She says that because of what she had to go through, she has trouble relating to other people, in addition to having trust issues and constant nightmares because of her time in prison. At that moment, I felt bad for her. She had to go through and deal with several things that, in one way or another, would leave her with lifelong trauma. I recommended that she attend therapy to deal with these issues. I told her that I would pay for everything as a way of apologizing for my absence when she needed us the most. She refused at first, but after some time of insistence, she agreed. So she began to attend the same therapist I was attending, but she asked me to accompany her to the therapy session. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression, anxiety and confidence disorders, and sleeping problems. For the first few months that I accompanied her to her therapy sessions, I used to wait for her outside the office while she took the session individually. But eventually, she asked me to come in and accompany her during her sessions, to which I agreed. The therapist prescribed her some antidepressants, and she began going to therapy 2 days a week. Lily also began attending a healing program for conscientious objectors who have served time in prison. For my part, the therapist gave me a number of pointers to help with Lily's recovery. Although Lily's recovery was slow, I can say that it really helped. Her fear of interacting with other people was disappearing to the point where she was making friends. Her anxiety and trust issues were no longer a concern. In general, she started to change for the better. We even both started going to the gym together, and Lily started taking kickboxing classes with me. Sometimes we had friendly fights between us. The year 2012 arrived. During this period, Lily and I became closer and closer. In the work aspect, we had a good relationship with Lily, who became my right hand in the company. On the personal side, we also had a very good relationship. We spent more and more time together. Going out for a drink or a walk became part of our routine, and we both leaned on each other during our therapy. As time went on, I realized that I had developed feelings for Lily. I know what you may be thinking right now. Did you fall in love with the twin of the woman who left you? For a while, the idea of having a relationship scared me because of my experience with Rachel. I was afraid that my fear was clouding my judgment, or that my trust issues would ruin any chance of a relationship. I was also afraid that the reason I started liking Lily was that I was unconsciously looking to get back with my ex, and considering they were both almost the same. You get my point. By other aspects, I mean personality, way of acting, way of dressing, etc. After consulting my doubts with my therapist and my friends, I was able to confirm that I was really in love with Lily. I was falling in love with her person, and not her appearance. Finally, I waited for our next outing to the bar to declare my feelings to her. I waited until we left the bar and declared how I felt about her. I explained how special I felt when I was by her side, and how I only thought about spending time with her. Lily was quiet for a few minutes. Then she started to cry a little, and asked me if I was sure about what I was saying. At that moment, I thought I had screwed everything up, and was just waiting to be rejected. I reaffirmed my stance on my feelings for her, to which she formed some distance, but a few seconds later she hugged me. Between sobs, she confessed to me that she felt the same way, and confessed that she began to develop feelings for me when she saw how much I cared for her. She said that I was the first person who genuinely cared for her in a long time, that I was the only one to support her when she needed it most, and that I was the only one who had come to understand her. She confessed that when she is with me, she feels that she is not alone. She told me that when she is with me, she feels that a good life is possible. She told me that I gave her a reason to keep living, and that I made her feel loved. At this point, I was crying too. Lily continued to cry as she hugged me. She told me that she hadn't said anything about how she felt because she was afraid. She was afraid that I wouldn't love her because of what happened with her sister. She was afraid that I wouldn't love her because of her problems. She was afraid that I would take her away from her. She was afraid that she would be alone again. At that moment, I began to comfort her and promised her that I would be by her side no matter what happened. Lily, for her part, also promised to be by my side, no matter what. From that moment on, Lily and I began our relationship. At first, it was somewhat complicated because of the problems we both had, mostly due to our trust issues and fear of betrayal. But we decided that we would not let our past stop us from being happy. Although it was a somewhat slow process, with some tense moments, we managed to build a good bond. This bond was what gave us the mental clarity and strength to take the final steps that allowed us to heal. Finally, Lily and I got married in early 2015. We both decided it would be best to have a small event, so we only invited the people closest to us. For those of you wondering, no, we did not invite our families. The idea was discussed and consulted with our therapist, but in the end we decided not to invite them because it didn't make sense to do so because of everything that happened between us. The wedding took place on a beautiful beach, and the atmosphere created by the sound of the sea and the sunset was something very unique and special. A total of 15 people attended the event. All of them were very close friends of ours, and even our therapist attended with his wife. One of the best memories I have of the wedding was seeing Lily walk down the aisle. Seeing her in her wedding dress was something I will never forget. But the moment I will treasure the most for the rest of my life was seeing her face as I put the ring on everything we both had to go through to get to this moment. Seeing that beautiful smile on Lily's face, I just don't know how to describe in words how it made me feel. A few weeks after the wedding, we found out that Lily was pregnant, a honeymoon pregnancy. I admit that at first we were very nervous, but as the days went by, the nerves turned into excitement and happiness. We took the pregnancy as the beginning of our new life together. At the end of 2015, Lily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom I will refer to as Alba. Luckily, at the hospital where the birth occurred, we were allowed to have skin-to-skin contact with Alba as soon as she was born. Holding my baby was a special moment, a unique moment when I met my daughter. Seeing her in my wife's arms, I simply would not know how to explain in words how I felt at that moment. What sentimentality and what truth. I don't think it is necessary to say what the arrival of Alba generated in our lives, both on a personal and social level. Our friends visited us every day to meet Alba. I must say that the first few months were difficult. People who have had or cared for a baby know that babies need a lot of time and attention, so it is normal to feel overwhelmed or tired. The baby's cries, having to stay up all night, preparing bottles at 4 o'clock in the morning, etc. It was a complicated period, but we were able to cope with it in a good way. We made an effort to give all the affection and love we had for our daughter, despite the physical and mental exhaustion we were subjected to. As the years went by, Lily and I worked hard to ensure that Alba had a good upbringing from a young age. We dedicated ourselves to creating a loving, respectful, and trusting environment for her to thrive. Despite the fact that we both worked, we usually organized ourselves to spend time with our little girl. With this, We come to the present day. Today, I can tell you that I am the proud father of a beautiful 7-year-old girl, and that I have the best wife I could wish for. As you have been able to read during my publication, it has not been an easy road. There have been good and bad moments throughout these years. But I wouldn't change a thing. I have great people by my side, and I couldn't wish for anything more. If you are wondering, yes, there is more history. Since last year, both me and Lily have had contact with our families. But I didn't mention anything, as I feel that the publication is already too long. Sincerely, I thank you for the support that the first publication had. Although it was deleted, I would like to know what happened regarding our families and the current situation with them. So I hope that the publication will continue to exist, so I can update it with the events that happened in 2022 and so far in 2023. Secret Voices note. I have a feeling that this story is unreal, but let's pretend it happened. Second story. I discovered my best friend of 10 years cheated on me with my boyfriend while acting like she supported our relationship and luring him behind my back for years. I F23 have been with my boyfriend M25 for 3 years, and a lot of it went really well, with no red flags, no indication of anything, or of him doing anything like this, and no history of cheating, according to all past ex I was able to connect with. We had started to have some issues while he was experimenting with polyamory because of his lack of boundaries with himself and a lot of miscommunication on my part as well. As we were experiencing these issues, my best friend F22 started talking to me less and less and talking to him more and more, and it began to weird me out because I know that she is his type. So I proceeded to observe, and I saw nothing happening other than normal conversation. I was out of work due to being sick, so I was home 24/7. Eventually, I gave up because she'd convinced me it would never happen. Gaslighting in hindsight, I chose to believe her, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. On May 19th, we decided to have a sleepover with me, my boyfriend, her, and my brother 22. We spent most of the day smoking weed and watching movies or playing games, just hanging out like usual. But sometime during the day, when I left the room to make food, she suggested a threesome to him that didn't involve me, but involved him and my brother. I didn't know this until after my boyfriend told me what happened. As we were all settling down and getting ready, we saw a shooting star, so we were all looking out the window, and I watched her place her hand on my boyfriend's shoulder, and he put his hand on her thigh, which made me angry, so I asked her to switch spots with me. After that, we all lay down and get the blankets and pillows. I fell asleep on the bed, and she and my brother slept on the floor since my cat popped the last air mattress. I fell asleep around 12:30 a.m., and she started texting him complaining about her boyfriends. So he went down on the floor thinking she just wanted to talk in his words, which you can see in the texts. This whole time, I had no idea how he was feeling about our relationship, why he was getting more distant, or why she wasn't talking to me after begging for her to check in on me. Ridiculous, I know. The whole time, she was sabotaging mine and his relationship by feeding him negative opinions whenever me and him had issues and telling him, "Why would you stay with her when you guys have so many issues?" And other things of that nature. They start talking after he sits on the floor, and they are talking about these two guys she's been having problems with, and it just leads into her talking about her sex life and him being like, "Oh sorry," and she basically is feeding him stuff like, "She doesn't want you to be happy," and he was saying, "I thought you didn't see me that way, you've always said that you aren't interested whenever," and she said, "I just feel like I can give you what you want and I just hate seeing you upset," and she says, "If you're gonna break up with her anyway, we might as well have sex, I mean no one would expect it, and I won't say anything if you want." So he agreed, and she took her clothes off and took his hand and put it in her, and he finger edges her, but that was all that happened. As this was happening, I was asleep sicker than a dog, while it happened right at my feet. He said that she didn't want to wake me, but at some point halfway through that, he looked right at me and didn't stop. He kept going, and after he asked what they were going to do, and that they had to tell me, she said, "I'll take it to the grave, so don't worry about me saying anything. Can you take it to the grave?" And he said he would. The next morning, I took her home, not knowing anything had happened. I talked to her for the next 3 days, and she acted like nothing was wrong, but I could tell something was weighing on him. The morning of the 4th day, he told me everything, every nasty detail, with tears and in total disgust with himself. I don't know what to do. Update. I have been living at my parents' house for almost 2 weeks now. I'm being told I didn't put the whole truth in the story because of all the things that have been talked about. So here it goes. The morning that he told me he did that with her, I pushed him. He was in a squatting position, and I pushed him onto his buttocks. I lied about it being on the Nest Cam. I caught it on my sleep recorder app and deleted it immediately. On August 13th, In the middle of us arguing, I was told that it was my fault that he cheated on me because he resented me for not letting him do whatever he wanted dating other women. When at the time that I placed that boundary, he said it was fine and that he didn't care. After he said this, I punched the phone out of anger and pure frustration, feeling gaslit. He did it out of resentment and hate and tried to tell me it was casual. I asked him to be honest with me over the past month, and he did so happily. What I was unaware of was that he was hurting himself in the process of this. So as I'm trying to have conversations with him, he's becoming more and more stressed, until one day it was just him yelling and not communicating anymore. Being told that it was my fault because he resented me was the most hurtful thing I've heard in a long time. He apologized for saying this, but I never accepted it. He lied to me so many times during this relationship before he cheated. Before he cheated, he asked me back out, and the night after he did that, he asked to take it back. The next morning, I found out he kissed his ex, which resulted in 8 hours of arguing back and forth. I go to sleep, then wake up the next morning to be told, "I've cheated on you twice in this relationship." I say, "Wait, what are you talking about?" Then he tells me he slept with her. I was just told we weren't together from January until June, even though he asked me to back out. He went off on me this morning for the Reddit post and how y'all reacted to it, saying that I made him look terrible when I only spoke the truth I knew at the time. I'm being told I'm just as at fault for the relationship going down the drain when I just wanted communication and quality time these past 8 months. We both blocked each other this morning. He said something about being happy, and I said, "I'm confronting everything about myself. Go confront this head on. You are a strong person." He then told me, "I'm stronger than you'll ever be, and you effing wish you could be half as happy." I said, "I'm glad you are happy," and his response was, "I am, and it's because you're not here to ruin it." He told me to have the day I deserved, and I blocked him. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.